In part 2 of this tutorial series, we will implement the putting system accompanied by a moving power bar minigame. We will also be recording the number of putts we take and displaying this all to a user interface or UI. Now we want to write the code that will allow us to putt our ball in the direction that we are aiming. So back into the code, our method will go here, and we can call that method simply private void putt. Simple as that. And what we want to do is add force. So reference our ball, rigid body, dot add force, and we want to take the same quaternion that we used here, which is feeding off that angle that we provided it, multiplied by the same thing here, because we're basically wanting the ball to be putted in the exact same direction that our line renderer is pointing. And then we're going to multiply that by max power. And for the force mode, we'll have to specify impulse, because we want a sudden sudden acceleration. We don't want it to be slowly kind of building up. So we want impulse. Okay. The last thing we'll do is call the putt method when we release the spacebar. Save. Go back to editor. And just collapse the line renderer for now. And let's set our max power to something like 1. Control S to save. And so now if I push down space and then let go, the ball goes in that direction. Let's try the other way. Boom, in that direction. Great. So part of the fun of golf, of mini golf, or the main trick to it, one of the main tricks is knowing how hard to hit the ball, given the circumstances and how you want to deflect it, and if you want to get it over a bump or down a dip or all those sorts of things. So within this system, we're going to have a little mini game where it will require the player to time the release of the spacebar with the power that they want. So what we'll do is we'll start off by just creating a power bar, which will be displayed in the form of a UI element. So you can start off here in the hierarchy, right click, UI, and what we need is a slider. And then you can see in the game here, we have our little slider down there. If I click on slider and double tap, just press F or double tap F, then and hit 2D, we can see our slider element and we can move that around. So we're basically going to be taking this UI element normally used for sliding, adjusting like values via the slider, but we're going to turn this into a bar that fills up and depletes and fills up and depletes. So let's call this slider, let's call this power slider. That sounds a bit more appropriate. And we're going to make it a lot bigger. And something we'll do, just so we can get a better idea of how it's going to look in a final product, we can change our aspect ratio to 16:9 here. And let's just move this back up. So it's looking a bit big. So something like that. Something like that will do. And what we don't need is the handle, because this thing is going to move on its own. So we can press delete with the handle selected, get rid of that completely, and you'll see now if I move the slider value, fills up, and then it empties. Fills up, empties. We will need to adjust the fill area so it does fill up all the way. Here, yeah, 0. You can just set all these to 0, 0, 0 everywhere. Now back to our power slider. See, all the way down and all the way up. And as for color, we can choose something a little bit more interesting. For the background, you can choose, sorry, I have a bit of an issue with my color picker. I have to move it around slightly before it lets me select it. So, so we can go with like a red, but we want to be able to see if there's anything behind it. So we're just going to set the alpha down a bit, maybe make it a little bit lighter. And then as for the fill, we can set these to 0 and 0, so it's all lining up well. And same thing, go for like a red. Make it translucent, but not as translucent, maybe like 70%, something like that. So now we have a power slider, which is looking a bit more interesting. We will want our power slider to scale well with the rest of our user interface. So what we can start off by doing is just dragging these all the way out and then setting these up here into 0, so it fills up the whole thing. I have to do the same thing here. 0, 0, 0, 0. There we go. So now the power slider bar is completely full, and this is all just UI stuff. It takes a while to kind of get used to how it all works, but you have anchors, which are like target positions, but then you have the actual position, the actual position of all of the elements. So you can see here, this is the actual position, and you can see it's that distance. So for example here, it's 60 away from the anchor, and as it gets closer to the anchor, it goes to 0. So the best practice is to have all of these values at 0 and just set your anchors where you want them. So with our power slider right now, it doesn't have any anchors set up, which means if you scale your interface, your screen, different resolutions, sizes, aspect ratios, all of your user interface is going to be just all over the place. So let's just set it kind of where we want it. So I would say about here. And then we're going to grab the bottom left anchor and kind of line it up like that, and take the top right anchor and then line it up like that. And then we can set all of these to 0 up here, like that. Now it scales. So now you can see if I take our game window out and make it smaller, it's smaller. Make it bigger, it gets bigger. And it follows everything. Even on free aspect, you can make it squashed, you can make it wide. It's not disappearing, it's all there. So we'll bring our game back. So now that our slider is set up, we can start playing with the value through code. Going back to our editor, we will need to get a reference. So let's create a public slider in unityengine.ui, and it will automatically generate this using unityengine.ui. Now let's call this power slider. And to measure, or to create the whole power up and down kind of effect, we're going to create a private void, and we can call this power up. And we will need to have a power time. So we'll be keeping time because we're going to be using a ping pong function, which requires time to pass. So we're going to list a private float, and we can call that power up time. So when you release spacebar, we will need to reference the resulting power level. So private float power. And so in power up, we'll say power up time plus equals time dot delta time, and then take our power value and equal it to mathf dot ping pong by power up time, and we want it to go up to 1. So we're just trying to get a value between 0 to 1. Now if you're getting this error here, it just means that this might have popped up. So we just need to get rid of that. Because there are two types of sliders. There is the UI elements and UI, so it doesn't know which one you're trying to reference. So get rid of that, go back down, and continue on with power slider dot value equals power, because the the power slider value will always be somewhere between 0 and 1, 0 being empty and 1 being full. And then what we can now do is when we do putt, we can multiply that by power, because power will be basically a fraction of, so if power is at 0.5, it'll be 50%, so half of max power. At 1, it will be full max power, and 0 will be no power at all. And the last thing we need to do is set up the input for that. So So we can use the same get key because we want it while, and we can say space. So while space is being held down, we want to power up. And then once we release space, we will then take that power and apply it here in the form of add force to the ball. Cool. So going back to our project, with our ball selected, we can drag our power slider to the reference here, Control S, save, and then once we hit play and I hold down space, you will see our slider going up and down. And when I release space, you see where it ended. Oh, and it has gone and applied that force. So our ball is falling away. Something we could just quickly do in the scene is, I just pressed F to do that. Let's bring our camera a bit closer so we can actually see what's going on. This is the rotation tool, so you have move, rotate, and scale. So W, E, and R on your keyboard, or you can change them up here. And you've also got the UI rect transformation tool here as well. So, but I'll be using W, E, and R to just change things faster, swap between them faster. I might change the 3D icon size down just so that's not so crazy. So yeah, if I hit play in the game mode, you can see I can turn it, and then if I wait for it to go all the way to the top, it goes. And then let's try it with very little amount. Yeah, it basically doesn't even move. Let's see if we can just get a little bit. There we go. Just a little bit. But we have to work on all the physics and traction, like friction and weight and mass and all those sorts of things. One last thing we can do just to kind of clean things up after we make a putt so that things can be ready for the next putt is just simply set the power back to 0 and oops, and then set the power slider dot value, set that down to 0, and then the power up time, set that also to 0, so everything's reset for the next putt. And you'll see that. So you can see after I let go, the bar is back down to 0. So before we move into refining the physics of our ball so that it works well with the mini golf course pieces, we'll just keep track of our putts, how many putts we've done, and we will relay that to the UI. So let's go to our canvas in 2D mode. The easiest way to deal with this is to create a panel like that. And let's make it smaller. Let's bring our game over here so we get a preview, 16:9. Bring our panel around like here. Now we might want something like that. We need our putts over here, and then the labels above. And then let's take our power slider and then make that a child so it appears in front. And then we can fix up this. So I would say we can have this at about 65%. And then something like that is fine. So let's set that to 68 there, 0.68 like that. We can set that to 0.1, and this could be 0.02, and then let's zero these all off like that. And then we can, under our canvas, so under our panel, go to UI Text Mesh Pro. Now if you don't have this Text Mesh Pro, you'll have to go into Windows Package Manager, and you have to search for Text Mesh Pro, and there will be an option to install and import Text Mesh Pro. But I already have it imported and installed, so you'll probably have to do that yourself. So back to the panel here, UI Text Mesh Pro. Here we go, import TMP Essentials. Great, we close that. And we want our UI to sit, our text to sit about somewhere like here. Okay. Oh, I see, yeah. So and then we want to bring our anchors, one up here, one about here. Yeah, in line with that. Let's zero these all off. This needs to be brought up. Okay, there we go. Now let's bring our font size down. Okay, we can make that bold, and we can change that to power. We can center that and make it in the middle, just like that. And we can also we'll want to go to extra settings, and we'll just put some padding at the top and bottom so that it isn't, you know, right on the edge there. So with our padding, we will have well, first of all, let's click auto size so it fills up the whole thing. And then our top padding should have 10 or 5, and our bottom should have 5 as well. Now we can set our, now if we just grab our game, see if we make this very small, whoop. Just check our panel. Yeah, it looks like, where are our, yeah, so we have to set our panel anchors first. So let's go back and fix that. Oh yeah, forgot to do that. Okay, we'll have to go back and fix our panel anchors. So we'll move that back down to the size that we wanted. Oh geez, okay. It's alright. Because it's a panel, everything else scales with it. So let's set that back to kind of how we originally wanted it. Something like that. And then bring our anchor. So our, yeah, and then we bring our top anchor down to about here. And let's just see where our anchors, so yeah, basically 0.3. So 0.03, 0.03, and you could just set that to 0.15 or probably 0.15, and what's that, 0.33 or, yeah, 33. Okay, let's zero these off now. 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, now this is going to scale properly. So now if I take our game, now if I make my game small, that works. We want to take our power slider, our power slider, so not a power slider, our text here. Let's rename this. Let's call this power label. Let's set our min way down. I mean, that's pretty much as small as it's gonna get, really. And you can see as I drag the game window around, it maintains its scale, even if it's small, or, you know, oh, or even big, like this. I don't know why that's being a bit funny. Hold on. When I go full screen, it's not updating the UI, but yeah, here you can see it's basically full screen. You can see where our power button sits. And then next, we will take our power. Actually, before we do that, maybe we can give our power label a black outline, just so it's more visible. Just slightly. You know, it can makes a little bit of a difference. And take our power label and duplicate it. And we can move that across all the way to the end there, bring that all the way in, so they're kind of sharing that, and bring this in so it's all lining up nicely. And we can change this to putts and move the anchor all the way to the end. So this one was at, these anchors were at, so not 0.2. This, yeah, so at 6.8, and then this one's also at 6.8, so we know that's lining up, and this is at 1 at the max, so 1 and 1. So you know that's all going to scale well. We can see how that looks here, and then that's all got the same scaling setup that we've already done, and we can duplicate this again. Let's actually change this to putts label, and now we can duplicate that, and let's call this putts counter. Bring that down. And let's fill up the space here, to the top here, to the bottom here. And let's just change this to, you know, something like 10. I doubt we're gonna have more than 100 putts. So if it does, don't worry about that. But let's just do it for 99. Let's make sure 99 fits well. So it's auto-sized. We can increase the max size here. So we can make the max size like 1,000. We can do that the same for all of these actually. Something I forgot to mention. So that if you're on a really big display, it's just going to fill up the whole thing. And we can get rid of these margins as well. We don't need that here. So yeah, we've got all of our UI elements. Oh, actually we got to just adjust our anchors here so that they all line up. Zero them all off. And then there you go. Scalable user interface. And just hit save on that. Now if we look at our game, it out. Now you can see if it's small, it's still there. Or if it's really big, it's all still there. So that's a scalable UI. Now we just need to track our putts and update the number here. So going back into our code, we will need a public reference. A public reference to the Text Mesh Pro UGUI, and that will add it up here, TM Pro. And we're just going to call this putt. We just call this putt label or putt count. Putt count label. Let's call it that, putt count label. And so every time we putt, oh, actually we have to set a private int to store that. So private int, call that putts. And then go to our putt method and, oops, yeah, putts, sorry, plus, and then we want to update our putt label. So putt count label dot text dot text will equal putts dot toString. Save that and go back to our project, select our ball, drag in our putts counter into here, putt count label, save that, and let's get out of 2D mode. Let's go to our cube. Let's make it a bit bigger, our cube, just so we can about 1 is fine, yeah. Just so we have more space to work with. Oh, putts are currently set to 99. Let's set our putt counter to 0 as it should start off with. And let's set our power slider down to 0 as it should start. And now if we hold it down, we have our power bar. That's 1 putt. It's going to keep sliding, so I'm going to have to do it again. 2 putts. Oh, my computer's a bit slow right now. But 3 putts, and then we're just getting a putt each time. And it's adding up. 4 and then 5. So I'm just going to stop this now.